This is the plenary session of this wonderful conference. It was extremely successful, and of course it has broadened the horizons of all of us. I'm terribly sorry that I wasn't able to attend the previous days, the speeches of our distinguished speakers. This panel, is going to be as follows. We are going to give the floor a 5-minute introductory statement time to the panelists, and then there's going to be a dialogue amongst ourselves. And this means amongst panelists and audience. So when we have the first statements of the panelists, you will all be able to intervene, talk. This is what we want. Something that's very much alive and which will involve us all. Now, I'll start from the people on my right. Mr. Antonarakis will have the floor first. Professor. I see that there's interpretation, so I can speak Greek. So, my name is Stylianos Antonarakis. I am a professor of genetics. In a few words, what I've done in the last 40 years is to study the genome. The genome, as we said before, is a huge molecule, and it's situated at the nucleus of each cell, and it provides a lot of information. So that means it tells us how we'll be born, how we'll grow, and grow old. At what rate will we grow old? What our character will be, what our physical traits, and it will also tell us what will be the conditions that we'll suffer from. Those who are involved in medicine and the genome are mainly looking at medical conditions. How can we use the knowledge of the genome in order to treat illnesses? Now, why are we interested in the genome? Because through our genome, we can see variations. The individual genome is, in fact, slightly different from one person to another. So if I was to actually compare mine to yours, we have a difference of 0.5%. Every 2,000 letters, one will differ, more or less. So the genome that I received from my father and my mother, if I were to compare them, will have a difference in about 3 million letters. And because we have this difference, each and every one of us have a different personality. And we also have a different predisposition to diseases. Thankfully, we are, in fact, very diverse, polymorphic. If we were unimorphic, we would, in fact, have been disappearing with any change. But because we have these many variations, any time there's a disturbance of the environment, such as COVID-19, there are many of us who are, in fact, resistant. If we were, in fact, living 200 years ago without any medicine at our disposal, we would have many people dying and only those who were resistant to the virus surviving. As we said, our genome is a huge book. And how much do we know about it, which is related to medicine? 0.43%. 0.43%. What a small percentage. The rest is unknown to us. We don't know what it does, and we don't know its importance in terms of health. That is why we are trying to use all the methods that we have at our disposal. These also include artificial intelligence, or machine learning, or even neural networks. This is something that helps us on the basis of the knowledge we've collected so far, that will enable us to train the computers. Well, this enables us to learn a bit more about the rest of the genome. AI, therefore, for those who read the genome for health purposes, well, AI is a tool. And as all tools, they can be used well or not. So put to good use or bad use. But everything's done in order to benefit the patients and their families. So that means that it's in all of our best interests, because in genetics, in the study of the genome, we're all pre-sick. Because we will all have certain diseases and we will all die. Therefore, the purpose of studying genome through AI and other means is to benefit the health of our fellow man and ourselves. Thank you, thank you. Now, that was very interesting, Mr. Antonarakis. And I think it's something that we should say here, because we're going to go from genome to maths with Mr. Antoniou. Well, it makes one wonder, especially if they're involved in ethics, when AI, or if AI will help us to decodify the whole of the genome, where will that lead? Will we find something that will leave way or space for free will? Or will the suppositions that our behaviors have to do with our genome or the environment that we find ourselves hold actually prove to be true? Things that are within our control. No more from me. All that in order to give food for thought for the discussion that will ensue. And the floor is yours, Professor Antoniou. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Good. Well, we can use maths in order to draw conclusions, doing a critical analysis. Shortly, I'd like to refer to 3 fundamental conclusions. First, all the risks that are identified related to AI do not have to do with the fact that the supporters and players are, in fact, badly intentioned and they want to harm mankind. No, they want money, and the money is, in fact, a lot. 14 billion amongst the 7 major companies. They're not at all concerned with whether what they're doing has negative impact. They're interested in having tenfold their money returned to them and returned on their investments. So, after this statement, I would like to say that our role is the following. If you start fighting them, you're playing their own game. What is missing is what the Metropolitan of Messoia actually identified. He calls it πνευματική νοημοσύνη. Is in fact more competitive. Why? It has to do with understanding and spiritual understanding, because our minds connected to the spiritual internet, and sorry for the metaphor, but I'll talk about it later, operates better in the usual operations. Now, in the in the language of computers, the organic computer can, in fact, connect to an internet, and that enables it to work better. So this is a message that we can put across to young people. However, these young people differ from those of our times. They want reasonable arguments. They want results. They're not interested in being cited passages from the Old or New Testament. What they're interested in is how to capitalize on this experiential knowledge that we're trying to convey to them. I think that's the role of the church today. I don't think there's any rival to AI which would go against the consequences. But we shouldn't actually say that we're a rival. It should only be a proposal that's more constructive, more useful for them now and for the future. Permit me to pause here, because I think we've got enough food for thought. Dear Mr. Antoniou, dear Ioannis, I'd like to add to what you said, that thankfully young people today are seeking arguments and proof. I think that's how young people, and in fact all people, should be doing. Now, I have the pleasure and the privilege to give the floor to a very good young researcher, Mihai Maftei, who will present to us shortly himself and his work. Mihai, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So thanks for this very kind introduction. Yeah, I work at the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence, and my main job there is to figure out and find strategies in order able and capable to audit AI systems. Now, what does this mean? So AI is a general purpose technology, right? Like electricity. And we benefit from electricity now without knowing this. Imagine what will happen if we have a power outage at this very moment in the conference. That will be challenging. So the fact that electricity became so safe for us humans is given by those standards and requirements that must be in place so that everything is safe, right? And exact in this direction goes the ethics of AI and standardization of AI. So with standardization of AI, we really try to figure out what kind of measures must be in place so that we can all benefit and use at maximum the benefits of AI without, or at least trying to get rid of as many risks as possible. I do this with, I came here with a very optimistic approach, and I have this. I'm more optimistic at the moment. But why I'm saying I am optimistic? Because on a global landscape and even more at the European level, there are so many organizations and state bodies and subunits and EU units which are trying together to really figure out strategies to make AI safer and to make AI for people. Of course, there is enormous work to be done further, but it's good that we have this approach, this explorative approach in trying to create standards and measures for AI to make it beneficial for us all. Yeah, so that's what I do in large. As I said, it's very challenging. It's gonna be even better next year with the coming of the AI Act. I'm sure many of you here are aware that the EU Commission issued the first law on the AI. Its name is AI Act, and it's already enforced. It's a risk-based approach. So it's evaluating AI systems based on risk, and it's minimal risk, high risk, and unacceptable risk. And on the 2nd of February 2025, all unacceptable AI systems will be forbidden within the EU. And to give you some examples of what this means, so unacceptable AI systems are systems related to biometric identification or social scoring or any type of related activities which goes into the direction of identification. And even more, this movement at the European level created what is considered into the literature as being the Brussels effect. So Brussels came with this regulation, with the AI Act, and the world reacted. And we see so many other countries now trying to create their own regulations, which is a very good point and place to start. So therefore, I am optimistic. I think the path is, or it's at least it's starting in a good way, but that doesn't mean we have to stay relaxed and to consider, okay, everything is beautiful, we have nothing to do. No, we have an enormous amount of work to do. And I do believe that church must have a voice, must have an opinion, and must contribute to this process of developing safety standards and requirements and even regulations for the society.
So in order to continue the effort to give food for thought, let me share a thought that just came to my mind. Our species, since its appearance on the planet, it is condemned to continuously walk on a bridge while building it. So we always have to build the next step, the next stone on the bridge. And of course, in order to do that, we need safety rules. And this is precisely what Mihai does. He makes sure that this bridge is stable in order to be able to continue walking on it as we are building it. Of course, there is another approach. There is the approach that we won't cross that bridge. Well, it's up to each one of us whether to walk on that bridge or not. I say, and history has shown, that there is no other alternative. But what you can do in order to feel safe, and this is where church has a role as well. So we need to make sure that the safety rules are abided by. We need these precautions that Mihai talked about. Now I would like to give the floor to my good colleague Ziad Kobti, who will present very briefly his work, and he will share some opening remarks in order to start the debate.
Thank you for having me today. I am really humbled to be among you. I'd like to introduce myself as a practitioner. I'm the software developer. I'm the one who works in my research lab with students developing social network analysis software, the one you just spoke about that they're trying to ban, or if we want to do any image recognition and how it works and how we can optimize it. So I'd like to share with you much of my experience so that you can focus on what is AI under the hood and what it is not, so that you better understand the mechanisms of how the software works and how much freedom the programmers have in making it do whatever they want to do and whatever the people who pay them like them to make it do. So from my perspective, I come from a background of development, but it also works with the nature of things and the mimicking game that I spoke about earlier. For example, I did my master's in genetic algorithms. Genetic algorithms are type of algorithms that mimic a human genome, and they try to solve problems based on reverse engineering how human DNA works. And it was a big thing when John Holland introduced it in the 1970s. And then many years later came the neural networks and evolution because of faster and faster computers. So now that you have more GPU-powered computer, GPU stands for graphic processing units, and they're very expensive machines, but what they can do now is phenomenal. It's like having tens of millions and billions of calculators in somebody's hand to calculate all these statistical models so they can make predictions. And that's basically what I do. So I hope I can share with you some of my experiences from the technical side.
Thank you, Ziad. Και τώρα εξ αποστάσεως συμμετέχει στο πάνελ μας ο κύριος Μιχάλης.
And also Mr. Mihalis Kritikos that is connected. Are you here, Mr. Kritikos? Because we cannot see you on the screen. Okay. Here you are. Mr. Kritikos, just briefly describe your work so far, and some opening remarks. No more than 5 minutes, please, in order then to have a discussion. Thank you very much. I would like to thank you for the invitation once again. I work for the European Commission. My job is to try to combine many different interests. Many opinions have been heard today. Different words with different narratives. And the European Union doesn't have a single voice always. Theoretical scientists have a different approach from people working on the field. We have the large corporations, the elephant in the room. We have the member states with their own priorities, the European Parliament, other bodies, other organizations and institutions that need to be taken into account when rules are established. I will try to be optimistic. We live in a continent, I mean the European continent, that has taken rather seriously it has taken at heart the issue of artificial intelligence and its moral implications. It is the first organization, the first supranational association organization that has established regulations, rules about artificial intelligence. Now we need to harmonize the rules on transparency, on the single European market, but also there is the need to protect human rights. And that's very important. We do believe that there is this Brussels effect, and we do believe that other jurisdictions will follow our model. I say that we are lucky to be living in the European Union because this is a human-centered model that we are following. Religious beliefs and other cultural narratives are involved in this model, and we try to protect people from the impact of this technology. Yes, we want to benefit from it, but let's not forget that it entails many risks, and that's our job on a daily basis to shape these ethical rules in an inclusive way. This is why this conference is so important, and I insist in the uniqueness of the European Union, not only because we were the first to establish rules, but also because if you take a look at what has been happening in the US and in China, their approach is not that human-centered. The US have followed the so-called deregulatory model, so they don't follow a legal approach to it. They leave room for corporations to act relatively freely. And the China model, which is much more centralized. And AI is considered to be the long arm of the state. And I do believe that our model is the best one, but that's not enough. What we want to achieve and what the church needs to do to win this bet, the bet of going along this technology without being technophobic. But let's not follow a deterministic approach. Let's adopt a critical stance. We have the room for co-shaping this technology. What I would like to believe is that at some point artificial intelligence will be beneficial for the entire society, AI for social good, AI for all. And what I would like to highlight is that Europe should also develop its own ecosystem of AI. Apart from the rules, we need our own tech potential and our own ethical framework. Many things can be said, many theories can be shared and opinions, but when you come around the negotiation table with big corporations, member states and EU MPs, it is much harder to agree on specific rules. The EU has managed to do that. We have the basis, but of course we need to focus on the details. We need to see how this legislative act will become much more specific. What will be the technical details of the text? And this is where organizations and institutions such as the Church should be involved. They should share their proposals, their narrative. How do you think that AI can be used, either in the public sphere or the private sphere? You will find that our office, and there are too many people that will hear your voice. And I do believe that we will manage to develop a framework that will be even more robust. It seems that this technology is developed by few, but let's not keep it a monopoly. Let's give it a community dimension so that its benefits are relevant to many more people. And let's establish rules that respect even the most vulnerable groups. I was yesterday in Paris on a conference on the children's rights and AI, and the most vulnerable actor in this system is indeed children. We have to protect children not only because they are the next generation, but mainly because they are the more exposed component in this environment. And it seems, according to the studies, that they have suffered the biggest harm from their exposure to internet and algorithmic systems. Thank you. Mr. Kritikos, thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. Just a few words about me. My name is Evangelos Protopapadakis. I am a professor of philosophy. I teach applied ethics, and I'm in the uncomfortable position of chairing a panel where everybody is a scientist apart from me. Philosophy is not a hard science such as genetics. And I am in this awkward position, and I think you are all expecting me to say something very clever, and I'm not sure that I can live up to your expectations. I will just say one thing in order to initiate the discussion. The title of this conference is Transhumanism and Artificial Intelligence. What does posthumanism mean? If one of our predecessor, thousands of years ago, wouldn't he call us, our ancestors, wouldn't they call us posthumans? We see people on the other side of the planet. I would just like to say that our ancestor would understand nothing, yes, but he or she would understand very few things. They would understand that we are fighting each other. There are still wars, there is killing, there is raping. We are causing harm to our fellow citizens, to our fellow humans. So maybe technological advancement we should all think of how we will also progress morally, ethically. We don't want to be looking like the small children that are playing with grenades. I hope that the future will not be that pessimistic. Let's now start our Q&A session. Let's open the floor to questions. The gentleman in the back, please. I can see some hands being raised. Mr. Vergidis, yes, please.
Θέλω να πω κάτι, αλλά...
I want to say something, but before I do that, I'd like to actually say something that is sorrowful. I will actually base this on what has been already said. I think that you will understand easily what I'm getting at. Goethe has said that the person who says too many things and what he doesn't do in a month's time is somebody who is too loquacious. So you said that this technology appears to be a bridge. And Mr. Kritikos said that in this bridge, I'm continuing the narrative that you said, there is a person who walks with two legs, one being software and the other being the anthropological one. I don't remember exactly the word used. The anthropological one is the one that examines the possibility for me to be honest in what I'm doing. Now, I'd like to give you a solution which came just in time. So I'm a person, I have in fact trained quite a lot. The bridge is from here to there. I'm proceeding with my 2 feet. I reach the bridge. When I reach the bridge, I do this. I hop opposite, I reach the other side, and then I continue walking with my 2 feet. So that means that I have gone against my consciousness and the rest of humanity because I based myself on what you and Mr. Kritikos said. This can be done. I don't know if you got my meaning, that I hopped across using one leg, not two. So the humanitarian element has been done away with. I didn't put one foot down. So according to what has been said, I think that all of that is superfluous. We have spoken too much. And I'm just using your own words. We have, in fact, singers. We have, in fact, singers in France that are so amazing that they make you want to learn French. But I think that we need to know what children do. Time is transformed into space. And I think that we look at the time all the time, but if we were to look in the heart of children, we understand what it holds. I think that the person who made this software, who can look into the child's heart, but there's other people, or another person who has done the exact same. He's created a software, but he's incapable, and he hates people. He would prefer to commit suicide rather than entering the heart of a small child. And I think this is something that's already been stated in other speeches. So both have a knife. One wants to use it to cut bread, while the other to cut off the hand of people. So, as you understand, with the same software, one destroys and the other creates. So, I cannot accept that. If somebody is not capable to enter into the heart of a small child, you should withdraw from him everything that he's created. I don't know if you've understood my point. Mr. Vergidis, I will not give the floor to anybody to respond. I don't know if somebody wants to take the floor. They can ask it of themselves. But let me say that it is, in fact, the fate of our kind, because we have heard it said that when you create something, you don't know what it's going to be used for. And that is something that can drive you mad. You can use all the safeguards, but somebody will be able to overcome them and use it for uses that you'd never want. I don't know if there's somebody from the panel that would like to address these points.
I'd just like to address the point on using the software and from a software development point of view. I'll give you an example of something we're working on right now, like my next research paper. We're working with a company. It's a car company, and now you've heard about electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles. So we are writing software to help them using their sensors in the car to detect anything that we can with these sensors and use it so that the car doesn't crash, so it's safer for its occupants and on the road. This company has its mission to sell cars, safe cars. So they're using these sensors in any way possible. Now let me give you an example of these sensors. They can go very deep in the amount of data that they gather and how frequently they collect the data. They can listen to your heartbeat if they wanted to while you're sitting in the car, and they can detect whether you're having a heart attack so that they can stop the car and call for an ambulance. So the invasion of the privacy, you could say, is justified because they're trying to save your life. But at the same time, if someone from another car next to you was able to intercept these sensors and collect that data and know everything about you, even down to your heartbeat level, I cannot tell you what they can do with it or not do with it. So your analogy of the kitchen knife is justifiable in a sense, but also we cannot go and stop technology from saving lives, but this is a work for my other student with another lab to create a security around the data. So we have to look at the full picture as we develop the software and not just one point of view and take it, oh, that's going to be malicious, we should stop doing it. No, it could be has very positive impact as well. So as a designers and collaborators with the industry, we need to do what's best and we need to be careful not to miss something like the security of the data that we just gathered. I hope this helps.
Ωραία, πάρα πολύ όμορφα. Προχωράμε.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, I'm looking at you, yes.
My question is for the two people who are working with the EU, Mihai Maftei and Mihalis Kritikos. Congratulations on the work to produce the EU AI Act. My question is, what does the EU need to do to keep up with the pace of change and the growing uncertainty over AI? To connect to the previous question about a knife is reasonably well understood, but AI is changing all the time, and suddenly it has new features that are very good, according to some people, and very bad, according to others. And as you know, as the EU AI Act was being developed, it took a while, and during it was being developed, ChatGPT was released, and suddenly generative AI. And that changed, for example, the French point of view. The French had previously been very enthusiastic about putting in controls, but because the French had a very interesting commercial company called Mistral and another open source company called Hugging Face, suddenly they wanted fewer restrictions, they wanted more freedom. So how can the EU keep up to date with this pace of change and make sure that it's not just the technology leg that's leading, but the moral leg is kept up to date and involved too?
Ο κύριος Κριτικός.
Mr. Kritikos, I think that's a question addressed to you. I'm not certain if I heard very well the question. Perhaps I understood that the question was mainly with respect to the possibility of such an act being updated. So that means that can it follow a pace with technological developments, or the entire discussion that takes place at a different level, be it philosophical or ethical? Is that the crux of the question? Yes, indeed, Mr. Kritikos, that is. So we see that the Act on AI does contain such provisions. I think that in certain provisions it's quite abstract, and that's done for a purpose. on one hand, in order to achieve an agreement between the member states, the legislators and the member states could not actually decide on a more specific formulation, and they decided to use a more arbitrary one and to see it subsequently. And the second, which is perhaps the most prevalent one, is that because certain elements are rather technical in nature and they have to be updated constantly, this is something that the Commission has undertaken. It has the authorization by the European Parliament and the member states to sit down with experts from the member states and representatives of the member states in order to talk about the ways of application and specialization of the provisions and updating them. So it is the text itself that foresees the manners in which it will be updated. I think that it would be in fact, very much in line with what we have in the EU. We cannot allow a text to remain while technology forges ahead. This mistake has been made in the past, and we see that technology goes at such a speed that we can't write the rules in stone and not change them. Okay, we can give guidelines, but those that pertain to the market and market usages, for better or for worse, have to be amended in the view of the specialists in the months and years to come. So I think we can rest assured here that the text will not lose its topical nature. When it comes to ChatGPT, the entire negotiations could have gained 2 years or a year and a half. When the large language models appeared, there was a whole discussion about whether this act should include them. On the 21st of April of 21, there was no such technology envisaged. So it was going to be closing without taking this into account. And certain member states and groups in the Parliament said no. If we want to have a topical text that will respond to the advancement of technology, we have to take into account ChatGPT and large language models. And this, of course, added a year on the negotiations. So this is a living document, very much alive, updated on the basis of its provisions, and we know what will happen from here on.
So, yeah, exactly. AI Act is a living document. And if we look throughout history, law is always a posteriori, not a priori, right? Even with driving. You first had cars with no regulations, no requirements, no standards. Then you had too many cars and you had to implement some. So I think it's an ongoing project which will develop through time. But of course, it's very hard. There will be challenges throughout this process. But it's good that this thing happens. And yeah, I mean, that's everything I wanted to say. So it's always an a posteriori process which must be updated and be considered as a living document.
Thank you, Mihai. Ο κύριος Ioannou. Τι είπα?
I'd like to add a small comment on your question. At the same time, Europe should encourage that the developments remain in Europe. For example, the case of Cambridge Analytica, which Professor Antonarakis pointed out in his talk, was a grand innovation. Is there a Cambridge Analytica now? It was bought by Google. Whatever, yes. But this is something that should be balanced with these regulations.
Να προσθέσω κάτι πολύ σύντομα γιατί...
Let me add something because there are many people who want to ask questions. I think we have reasons to be optimistic. Maybe it's the first time that our species, throughout its long history, first explores how something should be implemented and then it implements it. So far, it was vice versa. The latest example was the nuclear bombs in Japan, but now we do have bioethics and technology committees, and we can explore and review some things before implementing them. And this is very hopeful. I would like now to give the floor to the audience. Yes, please. Thank you very much. I would like to congratulate you all for your presentation. I'm Professor Antoniou. I'm a professor at the School of Theology in Thessaloniki. While listening to your presentation, one might feel not just fear but terror about the future of humans at a personal, social, cultural, political, national level. And this is tragic. I would like to believe that people are the same. No matter what happens, no matter how it happens, artificial intelligence does not change the substance of things. People, men, consist of a mind and a heart. They are a personality that has lived through 2 world wars. Now there are wars and there is the threat of nuclear weapons, but still humans cultivate their spirituality. They offer humanistically, they are sensitive and love their fellow humans. And when such principles are implemented, then the effect is destructive. But when we implement principles and values that stem from the Church, values and principles that were experienced and changed the course of history of humanity, I'm talking about the teaching of Christianism, and then we have the opposite result. So the hope and prospect of humanity lies in the values and teachings of the Church. Anything which deviates from that indeed has destructive consequences and prospects. So, no matter how dark the situation might be around artificial intelligence, and you've all described it, it's not a religion. It's not a deification of technical means only. We can see that people are resilient. They are so mindful, and they have the mind and the heart that they can turn themselves into the center of progress in the life of humanity. I'm on the other side. I believe that humans cannot be coerced by technology, because quite often the orders that we give, the prompts that we give, quite often they are not executed. And this made me very hopeful, because quite often technology is not that obedient to man. So what I would like to highlight in this conference is my optimism. There is optimism that can be found in the teachings of the Church through the anthropological approach and the implementation of the principles and values of the life of Christianity. Otherwise, there is no stable ground upon which we can stand. Okay, that was an optimistic note. I do hope that everybody else shares your enthusiasm. My name is Kanaris Tsinganos, you said that nuclear energy was discovered during the Second World War. And of course, we had to not stop it, but to slow it down. Right now, there is such nuclear power that can destroy the Earth again and again. So the humanity managed to put a stop on that. Now, I would like to ask two questions to Mr. Antoniou and to Mr. Antonarakis. You said that we have decodified only 0.5%. If we manage to fully decode the rest of the DNA, Mr. Kritikos, please mute your microphone. So if we manage to fully decodify DNA, decode the DNA, what will be the consequences? Is there any reason to be concerned? And when will this happen? The next question is to Mr. Antoniou. You know, when Hinton received the Nobel Prize this year, as you know, he was the vice chairman in the Google Committee for AI. He resigned because, in his words, he was terrified with the consequences that will be brought about by AI. So, question. Why was he terrified? What was the very thing that made him so terrified? Is this wishful thinking? When will these horrible things happen? Should we be concerned? At least I personally am in favor of technology. Tomorrow morning, aliens might inhabit the Earth. They might be much more advanced, much more progressed in biotechnology, in AI. And they might enslave us and make us their slaves. That's another risk. In life, there are always risks. And this is where we need people to be spiritually alert, to cross the bridges, to cross the difficult paths. My questions are very specific to the two panelists. What will happen once DNA is fully decoded? Are there any risks entailed in that? And is this realistic? Do we expect it in 20, 30 years from now? Mr. Antonarakis. Thank you very much for your question. As someone said, the most difficult part is to foresee the future. So let's say that our purpose is to understand, not decode, to understand the entire genome. Meaning, understand the importance and function of each letter. In this case, according to our estimates, we will have an answer to the myriads of diseases that humankind has been suffering. Not only childhood diseases, but also diseases that affect older ages, neurodegenerations, heart disease, schizophrenia, obesity, multiple sclerosis. There is a long list of diseases. So we will be able to understand them. And once their mechanism is understood, then we can cure them. We will be also able to understand all neoplasms. Because all cancers, because as you know, cancer is a disease that affects certain cells of the body. So we will be able to understand cancer and treat it, cure it. What's the risk? Maybe there will be no privacy. So everybody might know who you are. You might be completely transparent. There are some philosophers that argue that this is very bad. Others suggest that we will be freed from that. We all have a genome which is defective. Nobody is perfect. We all have pathological mutations. Then it's no big difference if we know everything. No big difference in labor, in family planning, in security. Because we will all end our lives, let's say, at the age of 100. Even this problem of lack of privacy, maybe it won't be actually a problem if it applies to all of us. That's the only risk I can see, the only potential problem. There are other people who suggest that every medical progress, every medical advancement entails a risk of dividing people into categories. Everything that happens in medicine is first enjoyed by those that have power and money, and then the other ones. But when we are able to offer genetical diagnosis to all people, then that won't be a problem anymore. So, after giving an initial answer, I would like now to come to you, and I will make a remark about what you said before about profit, about gain. There is profit, and this is why there is an interest on the part of people. When there is no potential for profit, people are not interested. And let me ask you the following question. Let's say that using AI or other future technologies, we are able to fight poverty. Let's say that there will be no poor people all around the world, and the price to pay is that some of our fellow humans will become very, very, very rich. What would you prefer? To fight poverty or to leave some people become overly rich? The comment was off the microphone. In my opinion, technology has helped people to leave poverty. Again, comments off the microphone. I think that the next generation of researchers, those that start their career today, at the end of their career, 40 years later, will have understood everything around genome. On what Mr. Antonarakis said about the few tri-millionaires and the rest of us that won't be poor, Kritikos says that the world moves around jealousy. If you need 100 euros to survive a month and you have 20 and the other ones get more than you feel unhappy. You feel happy. But if you don't have enough money but your neighbor receives even less, then you feel even more you feel happy. Excuse me. Profit is the incentive. They solve a problem with the software and they gain their profit, but they do not explore the consequences of that software. Other people and experts will do that. When thalidomide was discovered, the side effects were not evident. When they became evident, legislation reduced the use of thalidomide. So legislation cannot cover everything. It is up to us to contain this activity in order to allow those that invest in this software, but without having the dangerous side effects. We don't know what the side effects are yet. This is now very relevant. Today, in order to release a drug, then we need double-blind trials. The same should apply to artificial intelligence. Those that develop it are not bad, they are not evil, they are not trying to lead us to hell. But this technology solves some problems and creates other problems. So we need to set limits in order to prevent these problems. This is the phase we are in, and that's our responsibility, that's our task.
Μα δεν αναφέρθηκα σε εσάς, κύριε καθηγητά.
Professor, I wasn't actually referring to you. I didn't even have you in mind. But I've seen all of that, and you have seen it also. Okay, this might be excessive, but people do say such things. Terribly sorry, but the speaker is off the mic.
Αυτή είναι η απάντηση. Η έλλειψη νομοθεσίας.
Indeed, that's the answer, the lack of legislation. Well, I'd just like to say that it'd be good to have interpretation in order, to have the microphone in order to have the interpretation for our friends who do not speak Greek. So if you want to have a follow-up, please use the microphone. So what actually made Hinton afraid? We don't know, but he's no naive person, but he was, I think, fearful of the technology that was generated without having a legislative framework to accompany it. I think that is the reason. Off the mic.
Through the microphone, please.
Με το μικρόφωνο, παρακαλώ. Με το μικρόφωνο.
Γιατί αλλιώς δεν θα...
Microphone. Otherwise we won't know what scared him, Tom. You can hear me now. Okay. Katerina Tsido is my name. And I just checked what actually scared Hinton. He says that he said that men will no longer be able to know what is real. Why can they say that now? In terms of interpersonal relations, at least. I don't know if you've completed. I think that Ziad wanted to say something. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I just wanted to give an important comment from a researcher's point of view. We apply for funding to get students so that we can carry out our research. There is an alarming trend that I need to caution about. So, for example, in Canada, we have something called the National Science of Engineering Research Council, or NSERC for short, that funds researchers in the federal level to do research in engineering and AI in the works. This funding typically is for our research program, no strings attached, in the sense that aside from other ethical rules and basic rules that we have to follow, basically we can do research on any topic we wish. So we can use it to advance AI, we can use it to take an idea and take it to the next step. The problem I'm getting at is that there's less and less of that funding that is no strings attached. And there's more funding. In fact, sometimes there's only funding that is corporate sponsored. The problem with this, whenever I get funding from company X, I am a slave to company X. My students have to work their hours for company X. We can't even publish. They can tell us what to publish and what not to publish. So this is a dangerous trend where we have to maintain the ability of researchers to think freely and not to be controlled by what they can do and cannot do, or how they should use and develop technology so that it's limited in its use for the company's purposes. That's a trend that we're seeing. I wanted to caution about. Thank you.
Ωραία, πολύ ωραία. Πώς καταλαβαίνει κανείς.
So, Mr. Protopapadakis, please, could I perhaps make a comment? Please, indeed do. From Brussels, yes. 2 comments on the last point raised. What was just said is very important. Truth be told, private financing for artificial intelligence has brought about all of these achievements. Indeed, it is companies that are guiding and are creating the models which are consumer-focused. And the question is how we're going to increase public funding. And there's a huge program in the EU. National governments will also be investing more in projects whereby they think that AI will bring about social purposes and achieve them. The European Commission, a while back, decided to give free access to all the startups to the 8 supercomputational programs of the EU, which are there to help these companies to train their logarithmic or algorithmic models, but they need to espouse the ethical rules. The companies have to show that they will be to the benefit of society. Those that will do it will have access for free to these huge infrastructures. For those who know how this actually works, know that it's quite expensive, and those who have the money will be able to develop things further, faster. I was about to say that how you understand that a panel is successful when my friend has been asking for the floor for half an hour now, and I haven't been able to get to him yet. I hope that you remember what you want to ask. Nicholas Ludovikos from the University of Ioannis. I'm a professor there. What you have just said is very important. Communicating with a truthful manner is the most important. Let's talk about it philosophically, because it's an era of philosophy. From Aristotle up to Critias, we knew that the truth had to do with the nature in which we partake, and which is given more or less. And in the ancient Greeks, this is a matter of our reason, and we all are trying to see what is normatively stemming. After Hobbes and the Enlightenment, we see that we're interested in our personal flourishing. The ontological question, in order to hear the Lacanic school, is replacing the matter of what we desire, our desire. And ethics of McIntyre is the Wall Street ethics. There are no common concepts. I'm listening to Mr. Kritikos, and I'm really impressed by his optimism. And we see that if philosophers and theologians don't speak, we will have just optimism that remains without foundations. We don't have common sources of meaning. We need to know what the purpose of a life is. And this is different from what the American professors call a good life. So this has to do with what we consider is meaningful, and we have to see what we want to perpetuate. This is a prospect, a theological prospect. I think that is the meaning behind all of these legislations. What must we preserve, and what must the criteria be? What is the meaning of man? It's a subject that's not even put from our friends, Foucault and the like. But I think that is the key issue. You have a huge weapon, and you're no longer certain what to do with it. And the humanitarian side of Mr. Antonarakis is all good and well, but we know that nuclear Energy has been used for excellent purposes also, but mankind's at risk of being lost. It's a new anthropology. That's the problem. We don't have it now because there's no consensus. Metaphysics is collapsing. Everything's collapsing. Where is Europe today? Can you see where Europe is? There are a lot of regulations, Father. Europe is there through regulations, but we see there must be a principle. There must be principles generally. So now we see that all of these things no longer prevail. I don't know if anybody has anything to say about this, but I believe that this is a difficulty that we're all facing. I would be very pleased to hear somebody talk about that. Ziad?
I'll give you an answer that you may not like from a company's perspective. What is man? Man is a product, and companies are competing for their attention, for their time, what % of your time you're using their product, and ultimately, what % of your income will be generated and used by them so that you buy their product either directly or indirectly. And then, after all of that, you want to come back and get the rest of it.
So I will be very brief. The thing is that we have ethics principles. The high-level expert group of EU created a guideline for AI, right? But there are two issues. The first one is how to transcribe those abstract ethical principles in operational measures, right? Let's take the example of transparency. You have a system and you want to evaluate if the system is transparent. You can barely answer with a yes or no, yeah, the system is or is not transparent. But if you have to give a percentage, it's enormously difficult to say this system is 75% transparent or 65%, because on what basis? What is the definition of transparency you endorse for that evaluation, for that assessment? And that's exactly what you say. So that's the problem, because even when we have, that's the challenge we have to face, even when in the case in which we have guidelines, principles, ethical principles, and we try to make use of them, the transcription of this, it's very difficult. And we shall see how this situation will solve. Yeah.
Είμαι σε μεγάλο πειρασμό να μπω στη συζήτηση για την ουσία. Γιατί αυτό είναι...
I'm tempted to start a discussion about the substance, but I know that the audience consists of theologians, so I don't have the ability to do that. Aristotle says that in order to know the substance of a thing, you have to know its purpose. And I'm asking you, can we really claim that we know the purpose of our existence? We may believe something about the purpose of our existence. That's indeed a humble pursuit. But know it for sure, maybe that turns us into equal to God. And I don't think this is feasible. So our substance, if our substance is determined by our purpose, our substance will always elude us as a knowledge. And that's the major thing about faith, that you overcome your inability to know and you believe in something that you cannot grasp with reason. Because if you were able to grasp God by reason, then he wouldn't be God. But I don't want to start this discussion. Well, Aristotle says the exact opposite. It says that metaphysics and theology is known by God and nous. So Aristotle did what you are afraid of. But when you start with this perspective, this is completely different. Today we are living the tragedy of having put at the heart of everything our personal desire. We want something, we pay for it, we buy it. Somebody else cannot do that. McIntyre says that in the place of the deontological ethics places the will of power. I'm not saying that this influences the substance of technology, but it shows that technology will take a rather challenging turn. It's not an easy thing to say that the problem is solved. I think that optimism shouldn't be allowed in this case. There are a lot of things that need to be done. I don't know what's the opinion of Mr. Antonarakis or the other panelists. The floor to Mr. Antonarakis. I'm impressed, Professor. I'm impressed by the monomorphism of your thinking. The unidimensional, let's call it, way of your thinking. What I would like to say is the following. The treasure of our life is its diversity. So the purpose, your purpose, might be different from my purpose. But we live together, as Levinas points out, and we establish a society of different personalities. So don't be afraid, in my opinion, of the other's purpose. We are a society with the rule of law, and we can put some limits to the evil and promote what is good. Just a phrase, a quote by Ricoeur. He says that I am completely open to the others, but I need somebody to tell me who my killer is. And it is better not to be open in front of the person who is going to kill you. What did Luther say? He said that everybody can be a good Christian, even executioners, because he serves part of the rule of law. Yes, please. I think that this ongoing discussion about philosophical concepts doesn't have any benefit. Nothing is answered. For the purpose of life, on the theological perspective, we are absolutely clear. We know that we arrived on this earth. We are in the image of God. We have some spiritual traits that we keep cultivating in order to reach theosis and sanctity. And this applies empirically, anthropologically, in the image of saints. So the purpose is to become a saint as it has been experienced throughout the church history and life. If we don't have a purpose, then it means that Christ came to earth for no reason at all, and his entire gift, his cross and his resurrection had no purpose at all. When it comes to the positive offer, the positive contribution of technology, we accept it, we embrace it, but definitely what will save us is God. God gave us science in order to be able to glorify His name and help people. It's very, very clear. It's not vague at all. Now, when it comes to the financial exploitation by corporations, we live in a free liberal economy, then it's normal to have this as well. In my opinion, that's not the major thing. To produce a product to help somebody's health, if technology helps us, then money is available exactly for that. So that's not the problem. If we do know our purpose, we do know it, we know what's the history of the Church, which gives meaning to all things and does not allow us to get confused with so many different philosophical concepts. Mr. Antoniou, please. Just a remark. It has been mathematically proven that diversity stabilizes systems, ecological systems. The same applies to human ecology. And Heraclitus said that one thing is wise, everything is governed forever by everything. It's the empirical reality that we are experiencing, that we live throughout the 1,000 years of Church history. This conference is very interesting. There is diversity of opinions, but allow me to have my own opinion and disagree with some of the things that you are saying. We do not disagree, Professor. We can further discuss it after the end of this session on a more personal discussion.
I wait for a long time to...
It's not...
Okay. Oh, I think it makes 15 minutes that I wait to ask my question. I'm sorry. That's why I moved, just to be where the conversation is happening. Okay, thank you. Hi, it was very interesting to hear you.
No, 8 ώρα θα το...
Εντάξει, συνεχίστε. Please, go ahead. He will speak afterwards.
Okay, okay. Can I ask my question? Yeah.
Θα θέλουμε μετάφραση στα ελληνικά μετά.
It's okay. I have a question for Stylianos and Antonarakis. I am David Joad from Lille Catholic University. Are we not largely living today in the era of post-genetics, a very different era from the old genetic one, where we believed that the genome was the origin and fundamental cause of the formation of our biological traits? It seems to me that today the genome is increasingly regarded as one of the functional parts of a whole we can call a system, where the factors influencing the expression of triggering of genetic event cascades are also largely extra or metagenetic, epigenetics, I would say. A linear causality that sees the genome as the original key to the understanding and the cause of the expressions of our biological traits is no longer tenable. Do you agree with this statement? And what consequences could we draw from it in relation to the statement that everything would change if, thanks to AI, we were to uncover the 99% of the genome we still know very little about today? Thank you.
Well, I thank you for the question. I will reply with 2 or 3 statements because you mentioned several topics. What did we learn by studying the genome so far? We learned, number 1, that all life on Earth is related. In other words, us and the mouse and the pig and the Drosophila and the xenopus and the flies and everything, we started from a common ancestor. Second, we learn is that our history on Earth of Homo sapiens sapiens is about 200,000 years ago. That started in Africa and then populated the whole world. And I challenge a theology professor here, with all due respect, theologically to think that the majority of humanity lived before the Judeo-Christian world. So, third thing is that we understood that all of us, all humans, were cousins. We understood that there are no races on Earth. All the races problem is a problem that was created by the science of the previous 200, 300 years. And we came to understand that the genome unites us and not separate us. And of course, the study of the genome will never have a Nobel Prize because the Nobel Prizes are given to people, 2 or 3, and not to the hundreds of people that study the genome. However, I personally try to convince the academy that gives the Nobel Prizes to give the Nobel Prize of Peace to the human genome, because the genome told us that we all cousins and we all one thing on Earth. Now, the 99% of the genome that we don't understand the function, I answered the question before in Greek, perhaps you missed it, that we hope that we have answers to almost all disorders, and we develop treatments or change of lifestyle that will prolong our healthy life on Earth. And as people say, among some of the big names in AI, we want to die young, but after a long time. Thank you.
We have time for one final question. Now, I would like to actually help advance the discussion. Certain points have to be raised, and I think it was one of the panelists who talked about the theorem of Gettel. The base of AI is formal logic or metamathematics. If you look at the latest version of the Oxford Manual on Metaphysics, we see the death of positivism and its replacement through metaphysical ontology of maths. Saul Kurt-Gebel and other great minds taught us that by doing maths, we are, in fact, engaging in ontology, which is very hard and controlled. We're controlling our limits, the limits of formalism. And in essence, whether we want it or not, the theological and ontological question comes, and this is what will make you laugh, through AI. So that means that AI is not actually all of these diabolical things that we heard about. It's a clean, a pure ontology, which is not concerned with Heidegger and all the rest. It uses a prevalent reasoning. What's important is to see the rational, ontological, and I'm addressing Mr. Kritikos from the European Commission. So in this case, we're talking about the theology of law, theology of AI. And Mr. Kritikos, what am I afraid of? In our attempt to have common agreements, we are actually adopting minimalist solutions, whilst in fact there is a multiplicity of levels, which is in fact the most important. You need theologists, but for a practical reason. Theology is part of the ontology of maths. So if you leave the purely normativist behind you and you go to the interdisciplinary and the multi-levels, we will come back to what Plato said. You will be forced to philosophize, to theologize. Otherwise, you will not be able to govern. Thank you. Well, c'est tout. That's it. It was a very interesting panel. The fact that it lasted an hour longer than envisaged shows the great interest that elicited. We'd like to thank all the members of the panel.